Hi everyone, welcome back. Please subscribe if you're not already. So today I'm doing Mick Philpott, Britain's most hated man. Probably still is Britain's most hated man, and I'm going to tell you why. Between him and one of his wives, yes, one, he had two, he and his friend as well, he was responsible for the deaths of all six of the children that lived in his house at that time. How and why did this happen? Well, let's get into that now. Mick Philpott lived at 18 Victory Road in the UK, where at first he lived with one of his first young girlfriends, whom was 14. She's called Heather. She was only 14 years old and he was 37 when they first met. And they had a relationship together and she moved in with him. They had children together, but Mick was incredibly abusive to her. He used to lock her in the back garden and she used to have to go to sleep in the toilet until he'd let her back in. So one day she escaped over the fence and called the police. She eventually got custody of the two children that they had together, and he got a 2-year conditional discharge for the attack on her. His previous girlfriend before that, who was 15, she didn't get away so lightly. He'd shot her in the groin once before, and when she finally left him, he tracked her down and stabbed her in the house. And also, when the mother tried to intervene, he did the same to her. He was given 7 years for that, but only served 3 years, which is when he met Heather when he came out of prison and he was given the council house. After Heather left, he met Mairead, who was 19, and they actually got married in 2003. She was charged along with him for manslaughter, and at their wedding was also his girlfriend, who was 17 and 7 months pregnant at the time of the wedding. So they were all getting along nicely. They all lived in this house together. Mick obviously ruled the roost. He was abusive to both women, according to friends, but they both wanted to stay with him. He would sleep in the caravan in the front garden and alternate nights with both women. He was known as Shameless Mick in Britain because he wanted a bigger council house and kept demanding one and went on several TV shows.
Criticise my family, pal, and my kids. I'll criticise you as much as I want. Sorry, this is a free.
Oh my God, he was so hated. He was on every single newspaper. He went on any single show that would pretty much take him. Both of his wives both had jobs. One worked in the local pub. I don't know where Lisa, the mistress, who wasn't officially married to him. It was Mairead that was the one that was married to him, which he later said that he regretted, and he told both wives that Lisa was his favourite one, which obviously caused a lot of tension between them both, which, obviously would. But then Lisa got fed up with the violence and she decided to leave, which really annoyed him, obviously, especially since he's a man that doesn't like to be crossed. He's a man that's always got his own way in life. He has a violent temper, and she left and she took the kids with her. So Mick came up with a plan with Mairead and his best friend Paul Mosley, which would have a devastating outcome for the 6 children that were left in the house. On the 11th of May 2012, Mick was due in court with Lisa, who had just left with the children over custody. So he thought he'd been planting the seed in people's minds, saying he'd be getting threatening texts from Lisa and phone calls saying that she was going to burn the house down. This, of course, was all not true. He was just trying to plant the seed in everyone's mind. And at around 4 a.m. on 11th of May, that morning when they were due in court, there was a fire at the house, which an accelerant was used, and petrol was poured through the front door. The fire caught quickly. The plan was supposed to be that Mick was supposed to be the hero and rescue all his children. Unfortunately, he didn't get to them all. He didn't get to any of them. He just stood in the back garden waiting for other people to help. There was a ladder put in place in the back garden for him to climb up, but he never went up it. Why? Nobody still knows. 5 of the children passed away that night in the house, and one was taken to Birmingham Royal Infirmary. Now, people had started to notice that they were both acting very odd. When the eldest child was on life support in the hospital, they didn't go see him. They went and got a coffee, him and Mairead, rather than go see the child on life support. The 2 neighbours that had tried to save the children, who were obviously devastated by it, noticed how weird he was acting. And the police actually had to go tell them to go and visit their own child in hospital who was on life support. So the police asked them to do a press conference where they had body language experts already, and they basically asked them to try and find the people who were responsible for the arson attack on the house, which they did not do. They just acted very, very weird during the press conference.
I want to thank my 3 oldest children because they helped us to cope with what's going on. And then there's a young lad called Daniel Stevenson who tried to get in the house the same as myself, Joe across the road, and the Butler brothers. And of course there's the poor firemen, the police, and the ambulances, the doctors, the nurses, literally everybody who tried to help save our children. They couldn't. Just excuse me a minute. We've decided that through our son Dwayne, who unfortunately was the last one to pass away, that we're going to donate his organs to save another child, which is what we want, because if you can save another child, that makes us happy. It takes a bit of the pain away. And we can't express our gratitude to everybody that's been concerned with the case, with what's been going on. I've actually been down to our home, and what we saw, we just cannot believe it. We grew up in a community that's had a lot of problems with violence and God knows what else, and to see this community to come together like they have, it's just too overwhelming. We've had people from America, France, even the travelling community. It's just, we've been to see them, it's just overwhelming, isn't it? But I say I can't express enough the police, the fire brigade and the ambulance services, because what we feel, them poor gentlemen from the fire brigade saw what we've seen. You know, my heart goes out to them, because it's not just us that suffered, it's them as well. It's everybody. But there's one thing I would request is please leave my family alone. If you've got any questions or anything at all, please don't come through me or my family. Please go to the police, because what's happening at the moment, you're disrupting what these officers are trying to do. So please, I beg you, leave us alone and let us try and breathe in peace and quiet. That's all I ask. Thank you.
So the body language experts have noticed the first thing, like the crying, but there's actually no tears. They didn't ask for any help for finding the person who was responsible for this. They just talked about, to like diverted away onto different things about like the firemen and like the child's organs. The 6th child had passed away at this point as well. But what they didn't know was they went in the back of a police van as well, and they didn't realise that the police van was bugged, and Mick Philpott could be heard saying to Mairead, are you sticking to the story? So by this time the police knew, and they were both charged, along with their friend Paul Mosley, who had stayed at the house the previous night and apparently had engaged in sexual acts with Mairead while Mick was there too. On the 22nd of June, all the children had a joint funeral, which the Philpotts could not attend because they were being held on remand at that time. There was a fund set up and the public paid for the funeral of all 6 children. All 3 were found guilty of manslaughter, with Mick receiving the longest time. He got life in prison with a minimum of 15 years. Mairead and Mosley got 17 years. And Mairead's was actually reduced because she was they argued that she was under the control of Mick at that time, and she was actually released in 2020, which caused a huge uproar because they hid her identity, and there was apparently this huge thing to move her to a halfway house with nobody finding out who she was. So unfortunately, all these children paid the ultimate price because one man couldn't let go of control of a woman that left him. And they paid the biggest price in all this. And it does look like he will stay in prison for the rest of his life, which I definitely think he should do. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.